Welcome back to Dark Florida. I'm your host, Brooke Moreland, and this week we're doing something a little different, a Swapcast episode. I'm sharing a conversation I had over on the Occult Rejects where I was part of a panel interview with our guest, Ashish, diving deep into the fascinating topic of saltwater electrolysis and what it might reveal about the true purpose of the Great Giza Pyramids. We explore some mind bending ideas, including the possibility that these ancient structures weren't just tombs, but powerful energy machines rooted in technology and knowledge we've barely begun to understand. This one is full of twists, theories, and the perfect mix of science and mystery. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And before we jump in, if you enjoy Dark Florida, please share the show with a friend and be sure wherever you're listening to drop a 5-star review. It really helps. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Dark Florida Podcast. And if you have your own story to share or would like to be a guest on the show, send me an email at darkfloridapodcast@gmail.com. And you can also support the show at buymeacoffee.com/Dark Florida. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/at Dark Florida 411. Let's get into it.
You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This episode, I got a bunch of us with us tonight, and we got a very special guest, somebody that I met personally at the Cosmic Summit. So I'm very excited to get him on the show. But before we introduce the guest, we will we'll have the other rejects introduce themselves. We're going to start with Brooke. What is going on, Brooke? How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm happy to be here. Yeah. You can find me on Instagram at Dark Florida Podcast and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm excited for tonight's topic.
Thank you. And I very much appreciate you making it with us. And then we got Tyrone from Rebirth of the World. What is going on, my man?
What's going on, everybody? Everything you can find about me is on rebirthoftheword.com. That's my website. You can buy my book there. It was bestseller. It also can be bought on Amazon. Journey Through the Origins of History. Thank you.
Hell yeah. Go check out that book. It's up on Amazon. And then we got the podfather himself. We got Ricardo. What is going on, my man? How are you?
That name was already reached here. Okay.
Yeah. No, I saw that shit on Twitter. I was like, oh, isn't that funny? I love it. The podfather.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for calling me into this conversation. I'm quite eager to learn from this saltwater electrolysis. As for me, you can find me at as the name that there is on the screen on X. And I would invite everyone to go and look to institutefornaturophilosophy.org, where you can find our magazine, you can find possibilities to collaborate with us and bring suggestions. So, by the way, you can also look at my books, Stardust and the Resonant Earth, that you can find on Amazon. Thank you, Nick, for allowing this.
Yeah, of course. Also, if you don't mind, I think people should also go check out Universe Unveiled. You're kind of associated with that, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to plug that for you.
Them right now. So, but I came into here. They were premiering Tyrone right now at this moment. So.
Yes, but definitely go check out that show. Definitely worth checking out.
Absolutely. The girls are awesome.
Yeah, no, they are really cool. They had me on. Yeah. They are really awesome women, and they're very intelligent. Yeah. And then last but not least, before we get to the guests, we got Bennett. What is going on, sir? How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Bennett Tanton from Broadcasting Seeds Podcast. You can find me wherever podcasts are played, and also broadcastingseeds.com. Also, another thing that I've been pushing is a magazine that I'm affiliated with and an editor for called Strange Knocks Magazine. And you can find that through links at my website or at You're going to love it. gotknockers.com.
I do. I like it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Appreciate you having me on.
Of course, of course. And I'm sure, I think he's got like 10 ASMR channels out there he just won't tell us about yet, but
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, it's getting there. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, my man. I really appreciate it. And finally, to the guest himself, like I said, I met this man at the Cosmic Summit. To be totally honest with you, I think I met you, lugging that shit up to that Friday, fucking walking up that thing, going to film shit. I think I met you.
All this stuff.
Yeah. I think I met you then, and we started talking, and we hit it off, and I was like, oh, this guy's got something to talk about, and I got your information. But please, Ashish, let everybody know what your deal is, and I guess wherever they can find anything you're talking about. I don't know if you're on social media or whatever.
Yeah, I've been doing work on megalithic structures by myself for a very long time, just kind of as a hobby. I actually I'm going on a tour with Praveen to Thailand, and I talked to him about a little bit about what I was working on and why I wanted to go to Thailand and all this. And right before the Cosmic Summit, like a week before, and after talking to him, he told me, hey, maybe you should talk about this at this place called the Cosmic Summit that he was going to. And I had no idea about it. And since he told me to go, I literally booked my tickets the next day, flew out to North Carolina. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and ended up meeting everyone. And to be honest, this might sound naive, but I had no idea that there was a huge community around this kind of stuff, this topic.
I didn't know it was going to be that big either. I was blown away.
I mean, I know about the big names, of course, and that's kind of what I've been following for a long time. But out here, I've been in Arizona. I've been pretty isolated. There's very few people, if any, that work on this, and there's plenty of people that are interested in hearing about it. But I didn't really have anyone out here for many years to talk about this subject in any meaningful way. And so, going to the Cosmic Summit, I started talking to everyone, just talking about what I've been working on, and it just blew my mind how many people were interested in this and actually trying to do work on it too. And so that's kind of how I got into this. My background is pretty varied. I've had an unusual path. My background is primarily in finance. Originally, I started working at a hedge fund in June of 2010. I was there. And I ended up covering Tesla when they IPO'd on the stock market for the first time in June 2010. And that sent me down a pretty long path, pretty intense path. I spent most of my career as a securities trader at Edward Jones Investments. And over there, I covered a lot of tech. And I did a variety of trading roles. But in 2020, I transitioned to AI. And I focused on computer vision applications in autonomous vehicles or automated vehicles. And I did that for a long time. And now I realize that there is probably an overlap in skill sets that is not common, that is useful for understanding megalithic structures around the world, all of them, in my opinion. And when I started realizing that, I started, instead of applying my skill sets towards automated vehicles, which I did a lot of work in, I wanted to apply it towards this topic instead, because it's just way more fun and a way more interesting problem to solve, in my opinion.
Sounds good. So what made you end up at the Cosmic Summit? I mean, I guess, like...
Well,
you did say that other guy. Yeah. That's right.
Praveen Mohan. And I'll talk a little bit about this, but I think that India has a lot to offer this topic that most other places in the world don't have. And Praveen is the only person I know that is really taking the bull by the horns and tried to show the world how much India has to offer in this regard. So India has a unique advantage. It has the Himalayas to the north, and it is a peninsula, so it's surrounded by oceans towards the south. And so what that means is that over the course of its entire history, it has been a relatively untouched civilization. And it's an ancient civilization too. Long-running, long-standing civilization, continuously going. And I'm not saying there wasn't any war, but in general, relative to other places in the world, it was relatively untouched. And so megalithic structures in India exist all over the place. There's tons of them, not just, well over hundreds, maybe even thousands. And there's all different types. And you can call them temples, you can call them tombs, you can call them whatever you want. but these structures are insane. Oh, hi, William. I actually saw your show here with Nick, and you mentioned something really good about language that I might talk about a little later.
Awesome. I love it.
So India has these megalithic structures all over the place, and they're really well preserved. Everywhere else in the world, these megalithic structures are usually heavily destroyed, eroded, they've been picked away, they're taken, looted, and all this stuff. But India, they're not that heavily destroyed by comparison, and there's so many of them. And India has its own form of hieroglyphs. It's these like heavily ornately carved designs and statues all across their buildings, adorned everywhere. Every square inch of these temples and whatever you want to call them is usually adorned with intricate architecture, intricate design. And that's the Indian form of hieroglyphs. And they tell a really powerful story. Praveen Mohan is the person that I've seen that has really tried to demonstrate this to the world. I'm not going to be able to do anywhere near as much work on it as he is, but I hope to start to bring together a lot of different understandings from different places, because I think now is the time to start solving what all these megalithic structures all around the world are about by trying to reverse engineer their function. And I think that what we're going to find is that these megalithic structures are related in some way, and they share patterns that overlap each other. And I'll try to demonstrate a little bit about that. But the point is that we may not be able to solve everything from these megalithic structures on an isolated basis, just with what the evidence is on the ground because of how destroyed or looted or whatever they are. But if we can start realizing that these megalithic structures all over the world are related, maybe we can start cross-pollinating understanding from one and apply it to another. And since there's so many examples of this all over the world, I think that this is an area that is ripe to be kind of like exploited. And I think that India has quite a lot to offer because of this. There are numerous structures that represent megalithic construction that are impossible to build even with modern technology. One that's like really not as well known that I think everyone should know about is Kailasa Temple in India. If you haven't seen Kailasa Temple, Praveen Mohan has a great video on it, but you can watch any. Kailasa Temple is this enormous temple structure built out of one giant mountainside, one stone that builds the entire complex, and it's carved from the top down in basalt, which is near the same hardness as granite, and it's just impossible to build. Today we can't do it, not even close, let alone however many hundreds or thousands of years ago. And so I want to start trying to bring some of that into the conversation, cross-pollinating understandings from others and applying them.
Well, I would not say that it's impossible to build today in terms of general architecture, but it's impossible to build today in terms of fine art that we encounter at the same time. So it will take more time than we could today possibly afford to create such a thing, right? So it's incredible that in a primitive time they could find people to do that job and be as perfect as it was. So that's the fascinating part to me in that regard.
So to bring in a little bit of the finance, one of the things is we have to start really looking at what the narratives around all these tombs or temples really is implying. Because, okay, sure, maybe if you put an extreme amount of effort with primitive tools and an infinite amount of time and so on, you might be able to eventually do something like this. However, there's so many of these structures all over the world, and you have to really start understanding the economics at the time period of what the narratives are implying. So, for example, in Egypt, the current narrative for the Giza Plateau is that it was a national project and a massive labor force was dedicated to this task for about 30 years. Now, to put some numbers behind this, just to get a little bit of a flavor of what I'm talking about, in Egypt alone, there's more than 130 known pyramids there. Sudan also has hundreds of pyramids. So together between them, 300 to 400 pyramids between those two countries. And then these pyramid structures are all over the world. In Mexico, you have hundreds of known pyramids, maybe thousands if you include the ones we don't know about. South America, riddled with pyramids all over the place. Asia, riddled with pyramids all over the place. I've heard about many in Europe that I don't know too much about. But these things are all, literally thousands of just pyramid structures alone, nothing else, just pyramid structures alone. And now you add in on top of that all the other megalithic structures that are not pyramids, like Angkor Wat, Kailash Temple. I'm going to talk a little bit about Taj Mahal today, and many others around the world. There are so many of these heavily engineered, highly sophisticated, multidisciplinary megalithic structures that are demonstrating deep understanding of principles across a numerous subjects all in one. This is not a coincidence. There's no such thing as thousands of coincidences. And so every major civilization around the world, every major continent, I'm not sure about Antarctica, every single one is demonstrating that they had advanced knowledge and an ability to build these structures repeatedly. And so what I was saying about the finance and economic side of it, it's not like you just become an advanced civilization and you get to stay that way for free. You have to really understand what the economics of that narrative is implying. It's true that you are dedicating a massive labor force of highly skilled workers. They have to be artisan workers to be able to pull off the engineering in these structures. And you do that for an extended period of time, like 30 years just for one project, and then repeat that again and again for the 130 pyramids, whatever, in Egypt and so on, and all the other ones. This is exactly how you collapse a civilization. If none of these structures generate any kind of economic or practical utility to the society, this is going to destroy the civilization. It's not free to just be a civilization and expect it to just go on like that, especially for the history of Egypt where they're talking about these things where it lasted for thousands and thousands of years. No such civilization can dedicate the labor force and the economics behind it to these tasks for no economic utility at all. That's not sustainable.
That's kind of a good point, I guess.
Well, I'm not sure that if we talk about megaliths and not pyramids, I'm not sure that there is an economical factor there because the benefits are enormous. In terms of the pyramids, I would say, and what you're saying, I would say that coincidence takes planning for starts, and that you are right in terms of the workforce, because if you look to Thailand alone, you'll find countless sites with this replicated statues of women, of men dancing. The sculpture goes around. You can see the back of the sculpture that is coming from the rock. So it begs the question: how many workers they have? How many sculptors they had? Because who can replicate such a thing constantly, like 10 figures that are exactly the same? We would need a robot to do that today to have that kind of precision. It's not that we couldn't do it. It's just we don't find technology in their time to be able to do that. And that's the puzzle. And in fact, another point that you present is that the time frame is too short, even for our means today. So it would take exponential more time to create any of these structures. And we'll have the economical factor on top of it, which I think back then was not as constraining as it is today, right? Because if we consider it as a global effort, what purpose is there, your question, and it's a very good one. For what purpose will we create something that generates nothing? It must generate something, right? But it doesn't mean it has to be economical, in my perspective.
Yeah. And the argument I'm making is that it's fine as a one-off to do megalithic structures, and maybe you can invest your society into this 1 time, 2 times, 10 times. But to do it in a repeated fashion over and over again, that's where it becomes catastrophic, because that doesn't generate any progress, and it also doesn't line up with the idea that this is a culture that values technological progress, because if they were valuing technological progress, they would be applying it for practical purposes. If they were purely valuing technological progress and only to build these structures, they're pigeonholing themselves, first of all, in their technology. And humans are curious people in general. It's not like when you learn something, you only want to apply it exactly one way and only one way, and you don't want to apply that concept to anything else. The value of advanced understanding is the ability to apply it in more than one way and be able to demonstrate control over that. And also you're right that if, again, given enough time and given enough people, given enough resources, you can effectively do infinitely anything. But the issue is that they're carving all these ornate structures into really hard stone. Like, for example, Kailasa Temple is carved out of basalt, which is near granite in terms of its hardness. And they're not just carving major structures, they're also carving fine, minute detail for the structures. And they're even, like you were saying, carving behind the statue to carve out the negative space behind it as well.
They can make chains out of the stone, even chains.
They made chains out of it too. Yeah, all kinds of crazy stuff.
I've seen this.
And so this is where it becomes really hard to believe that this is the only the only way that they applied their advanced skill was for non-practical purposes, and that there was no practical application for these same advanced skills. And the other part of it is that in order to build these structures, it requires advanced understanding in many subjects, not just one. Civil engineering, for sure, and quarrying and all this. But also they're demonstrating over and over again that they understood polar alignment, because these structures are aligned perfectly to polar north and south, east, west. So they have demonstrated that they understand somewhat what is magnetism and why it might matter. And they put these things on magnetic ley lines. And again, one-offs, maybe. But again and again and again, this is where coincidences can't happen. They didn't just accidentally do that. Precisely. And where part of the engineering argument here is that precision is not an accident. Maybe as a one-off, but precision is not consistently an accident. Precision is effort. It is extreme effort, especially at the degree of precision that they're going for. In order to achieve precision at that high skill level, that has to be done intentionally. That you don't get to do that by accident over and over again.
So I would say in my research in terms of megaliths that I think can be applied to pyramids, can be applied to the temples that you are speaking, I find that the disciplines necessary start with geomancy, start with the recognition of fault lines and underground waterways. Then you have the knowledge of the telluric lines. Then you have the mineralogy that you specifically choose for specifically purpose in specifically places of the construction itself. Then you have astronomical knowledge that takes thousands of years, because it's how many years for 1 degree? I don't know if it's 88 years for each degree on the sky.
70 years. You're talking about the
72, right?
Yeah,
25,920
year precession.
72 years for just 1 degree of the sky, so it would require multiply that for the number of
and again, you're demonstrating that they understood this back then.
Sure. And then you need to understand sacred geometry, and then you need to understand acoustics, because all of them display, or most of them display knowledge of acoustics and resonance. So on this alone, we have here a vast array of multidisciplinary knowledge that we today do not possess. So we are rediscovering it today, step by step.
I also want to say, this is understood in academia, but maybe it's worth saying. There is one layer of difficulty that is theory, and that can be hard. But applying theory in practice in the real world is at minimum 10 times harder than the theory of it. So what I want to say is that it's one thing to just understand something. It's a way exponentially higher degree of difficulty to understand something and then apply that understanding in the real world in a practical way. That is a way harder task. And so that's also, I think, relevant, is that not only do they understand these concepts, but they understood them well enough to apply them and pre-plan them and make structures that had to be pre-planned in order to achieve those results. And you mentioned a lot of different subjects, and these subjects are like the understanding of these subjects appears to be universal, because acoustics, the geometry, astronomy, the civil engineering, and so on, these things are not understandings that were confined to a specific civilization. These things are demonstrated and applied across numerous independent civilizations, which means that they were all able to get to that level of achievement somehow. And supposedly a lot of these civilizations never talk to each other.
Unless you consider diffusion. And then
or maybe they were learning by osmosis too. I guess anything is possible too.
Magic.
I mean, in Egypt, it's insane that there's all sorts of evidence. I've been there twice, to the Great Pyramids and then some of the museums around Giza and then Alexandria. Well, it's not called Alexandria anymore, but there's certain stones that are like, I guess you would call them cast-offs, where it shows like, how did they build this? Like, I mean, like, right. And this is kind of what we're delving into, but they didn't build it the way that they are telling us, period. Or that the narrative says, right? I mean, there's all kinds of etchings that look like just saws, lasers, all kinds of stuff. And there's all kinds of evidence for that, even sitting in museums. And like, you can walk up and literally touch it, where there's a partially cut line that is just still attached. I don't even know how to describe it. I'll have to find a picture. But it looks like a circular saw. Cut the thing, but there's like remnants of where it wasn't chiseled off. It's unbelievable. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a lot of Ben Vanderwyck's work, I think.
Yeah.
He also talks a lot about this, where there's plenty of like, again, it's impossible to have thousands of coincidences. There's plenty of evidence of machine tools.
Right. And for them to I'm just reiterating on your point, where the fact that, I mean, there's 5 main things that they say that these megalithic structures are for, and whether it's funerary, astronomical, stuff, which we know, right? Ritual ceremonies, territorial, tribal, and cultural, technical, right? But why are they building them? And that's what I'm here to hear you talk.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do. And so this is a good kind of launching platform, because what I'm trying to do is a form of pattern recognition. And what I'm seeing is that there are various concepts that are copied and pasted in various ways across these megalithic structures. And what I'm trying to achieve is I'm trying to find the base primitives. What is the most fundamental, most primitive, step 1 functional purpose of megalithic structures? Because it doesn't make sense that these things are tombs. And so I'm going to start I'm going to get into what I'm talking about today, but what I want to demonstrate is these patterns of similarity between megalithic structures. And so maybe this will be a good place for me to start. I can start share screening if you want.
Oh, sure.
And I'm going to start by repping Arizona, because for how common and frequent pyramid structures and other megalithic structures are in the world, it's surprising how few, if any, megalithic structures are in America. There's no really known pyramids, even though in Mexico, there's tons of them. And we know that in Arizona and the Grand Canyon, Arizona and Grand Canyon used to be part of Mexico long ago. And so what I want to start doing is start attacking the narrative that is going on right now. And the Grand Canyon demonstrates some suspicious activity, some signs of things that don't match the narrative. And so if you don't know, the current mainstream narrative of the Grand Canyon is that the Grand Canyon was carved out by massive water flow over millions of years. And what we see elsewhere in Arizona, everywhere else in Arizona except the Grand Canyon, what we see is patterns of water erosion that are consistent with heavy rainfall. And at the Cosmic Summit, Randall Carlson talked a little bit about this in his presentation, and he demonstrated around Arizona, except for the Grand Canyon, everywhere else in Arizona, you see heavy rainfall, water erosion patterns. And this is characterized by smooth edges, rounded shapes, and irregular grooves. And what we see at the Grand Canyon is not that. So this picture that I'm showing here is taken from the South Rim. And this picture is just to demonstrate a few of the things that do not line up with heavy rainfall. And that's the, let's see, which screen? You can see my mouse, right? Yeah. So over here, you're going to see flat shapes.
Oh, I can't see the mouse. I don't think you can see the mouse.
Can you see my mouse?
It was at the middle lower part.
Oh,
of the
okay.
screen.
I'm sorry.
I have it in the middle.
I'm blind.
Yeah, okay.
I'm blind. Yeah, there it is.
What you see is flat surfaces. You see rectangular shapes. The water erosion grooves are vertical, not perfectly vertical, but roughly vertical. And you see consistent regularity. These intervals are consistent. And you also see them in parallel lines over and over again. Now, to kind of contrast that, I want to show what water erosion looks like with heavy rainfall. So this is the Sphinx, and the perimeter wall of the Sphinx is what we classically understand is the water erosion pattern for heavy rainfall. So again, you see smooth edges, you see rounded shapes, irregular grooves that are not in regular intervals, and they're also angled quite a lot. So this is what we classically understand would be heavy rainfall. And every major civilization, every major religion even, they all have a story of a big flood story. A big, huge flood happened somewhere. And we even have some idea of what maybe that timeline is. We have at least the Younger Dryas hypothesis that demonstrates that maybe that could be where a big flood event maybe happened or something like that. But again, the narrative in the Grand Canyon is that this was created over millions of years. This Grand Canyon was created over millions of years. So something is odd about that, because if there was a massive flood that happened all over the world and everywhere else in Arizona is showing the smooth edges, rounded shapes, and all this heavy rainfall, water erosion patterns, but we're not seeing it in the Grand Canyon, even though this is supposed to be millions of years old and the Younger Dryas is supposed to be 10, 12,000 BC, something like this, that's supposed to be relatively recent in history. Now, we also see at the Grand Canyon a variety of these pyramid structures, these pyramid-looking shapes. And now something that is inconsistent with, again, the narrative is if you had a structure like this pyramid sticking out, whatever this is, let's just say it was a rock at one point, just some random rock, big rock sticking out, and it was bombarded by water in the same direction of travel over and over and over again. The type of erosion pattern that you would expect would be more of a teardrop shape. You would not expect to see a flat edge, then straight edges on the sides, and then somehow it carves out the back flat as well. And then, of course, why would it create a step pattern specifically here, but not do that anywhere else around it? Now, these pyramid structures at the Grand Canyon are not unusual. You actually see these pyramid structures more than once, multiple times. In fact, I think there are dozens of them that are known. And the other thing is, I just want to show you just real quick. Here's someone that I posted on my X. You also see all kinds of megalithic structures, or not megalithic, but you see massive rectangular cut blocks at the Grand Canyon as well. And hikers will find these things all over the place, and they kind of look like they're arranged pathways. And hikers go out to the Grand Canyon.
Yo, Ashish, I think when you play the video, it ends up cutting into your audio for some reason.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a weird thing that's been happening recently for for some reason.
Okay. Well, that's really all I wanted to show with that anyway.
Gotcha.
The point, all I wanted to convey is that it's not uncommon to see this stuff. And so this is starting to become really suspicious. It doesn't line up with the narrative, especially to see rectangular blocks like that all the time. And just to add a little flavor text, when you go to the Grand Canyon, there's your pads are really well predefined. And the majority of the Grand Canyon, which has roads all through it, road systems all through it, most of it is blocked off for reasons that don't seem to make any sense. And when you have hikers that go to maybe the wrong place in the Grand Canyon, it's pretty common to see Black Hawk helicopters flying around there. And there's plenty of videos of this over and over again all over YouTube. So again and again, we're seeing things that don't seem to make any sense relative to the narrative. So I also want to demonstrate that there is that water is a really common feature at megalithic structures. So there are water reservoirs all around the Giza pyramids. And then Angkor Wat right here shows artificial water reservoirs. I think one side of this water reservoir is like a mile long. And Angkor Wat, the area surrounding it, has artificially created water channels all throughout. It's covered in water channels. In South America, including Peru, all over South America, you'll see the same thing. Water channels all over the place. Mexico, I think they're starting to believe that there are underground water channels. And of course, I'm going to say this wrong, I can never pronounce it, Teotihuacan. They're also, that pyramid structure also, they know that there's a water table underneath it as well. And you're going to see this over and over again. When I talk about the Taj Mahal, it'll also be there as well. So
underground waterways, always.
Not only underground, but yes, underground waterways, and in the case of Angkor Wat, they're above ground, and reservoirs, and all kinds of things. And the central point here is that water is a common element for megalithic structures. They're commonly found by them. And so, again, what I'm trying to achieve here is I'm trying to find patterns of similarity and start figuring out if there's a way to solve from other megalithic structures and apply those understandings. And so what I'm trying to build the argument for is that water must be a significant and important element of the functional purpose behind many of these megalithic structures. So before I get into the pyramids, I want to rep Arizona just a little bit more. I like this picture. This is also from the South Rim. And again, here you can kind of see a step pattern, a step pyramid pattern showing. And even over here, you kind of see it looks like there's a pathway coming out of whatever this structure used to be. But I don't like this picture because of this. I like this picture because it demonstrates two types of water erosion in the same picture. So the top half shows the water erosion that is stereotypical and commonly seen and demonstrated at the Grand Canyon, which is these, if you zoom in, you'll see again, regularly spaced intervals of rectangular shapes and this step pattern and these vertical lines. And of course, these are parallel. And if you can take a picture basically anywhere in the Grand Canyon, you'll see this. This is everything back here is that. Miles and miles and miles of these parallel lines, which is hard to do in nature. But what you see towards the bottom is you get away from that. You go back to those rounded edges, smooth edges, rounded shapes, irregular grooves. You get away from the flat rectangles and the hard shapes. These hard shapes, you don't see them at the bottom. And what's really interesting that flips all of this on its head is that the water erosion from heavy rainfall is found towards the bottom, which is supposed to be relatively recent in history. But this water erosion pattern is not at the top. which the erosion pattern that's at the top is supposed to be the oldest water erosion that occurs. So this really flips it on its head. Why is there recent water erosion patterns at the bottom, but not at the top? And so that's really where things get super suspicious. And here's just another picture to demonstrate that these pyramid structures are not uncommon in the Grand Canyon. There's dozens of them that are known. And again, hard shapes, square shapes, rectangular, hard edges, corners, and so on.
Why is it that you think, though, that pyramids are absent when we discuss America? Why is that not part of the official narrative, do you think?
I don't have a good answer for that. I wanna maybe, so something that's a little controversial. In Peru, I wasn't really going to say this. In Peru, you see that they have this whole area that's just gray, and all the megalithic structures, the land is just gray for miles, stretches in every direction, and you see the outlines of megalithic structures. It almost looks like some sort of nuclear bomb went off and destroyed everything.
Yeah.
They actually say Peru has the pyramids are older than the ones in Egypt. There's actually evidence that says that. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And I understand that there's lots of megalithic structures that aren't completely destroyed, but I'm talking specifically about the area in Peru where it's just gray and it just looks like you only see the outlines of them and nothing else. In Hinduism, the Mahabharata, one of the three main religious texts, they give kind of an explanation of what could have happened there. And this is going to be super controversial. I'm not trying to die on this hill. That's why I'm not really saying anything about it. But what I can say is that there are murals in South America inside the temples that show the god Shiva flying around on a cloud, and they show it more than one time. Blue skin, somebody that looks just like Shiva in the murals. And why would there be any cross-pollination of this idea? How would they even know about Shiva?
Right.
And so to kind of answer your question, Brooke, I think what is described in Hinduism is that there was a big war, and this war ended up collapsing some of the civilizations out in the Western world, or the South America, North America, and I think it didn't really develop, is my guess of how that all happened. And there is some evidence of this because there's huge population drop-offs, and in particular, Indian populations dropped off during the time period that is suggested in the Mahabharata.
I mean, with it comes to stone pyramids, but there was huge earthwork pyramids built later, obviously, right? In the Mississippian cultures and the and places like that, down in Louisiana and all through the Mississippi Valley, and there's huge pyramids there, but they're not stone. They're not.
Yeah, they call them mounds.
They call them mounds. But at the end of the day, some of them are bigger, at their base than even like Giza.
And you have to take in consideration that the land used to build those mounds is not local.
Correct.
It is brought.
A lot of it's brought in, right, from far distances. So either way, it's almost like it was a reset almost or something.
Mm-hmm. And I agree that there probably is going to be megalithic structures in America that are not classically described that way. What I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to focus on things that demonstrate engineering,
right,
as conventionally understood by today. And I would hope that we eventually solve all that other stuff. But things that have more predefined shape and demonstrate clear engineering are easier to reverse engineer. But when it's a big dirt mound, that becomes really hard to reverse engineer. But I agree that hopefully someday we end up getting those types of answers. And again, what I'm trying to do here, I'm going to talk about features that are a little bit more advanced. But the crux of what I'm trying to say is that these structures in their true function are multifunctional and have demonstrated multiple disciplines that we already know about. And I'm trying to find the base primitive. What is step one? And if we can find step one, we can then build the rest of our understanding on top of that. But right now, it's kind of just this haphazard, people are measuring and detailing things that they find here and there, but there isn't a cohesive way of bringing it all together and being able to tell a story around what's actually happening yet. And so this is the
well, you haven't read my book yet.
Oh yeah, well yeah, sorry. As I said, as of the Cosmic Summit, that was the first time I even knew that there was a large community around this. So I have to admit I'm very new to this, and I've also never really had many people to talk to about this. So a lot of this is stuff that I've been ruminating about in my head for years, and I've been wanting to talk to people about it just to see if anything I've been working on makes any sense. And so this is, I'm hoping to get some feedback as well. I know I'm going to have things wrong, but again, I'm trying to just make a good faith effort in finding what are the similarities, what are the patterns that overlap between all these different megalithic structures, and whether that actually means something. Because in my opinion, thousands of coincidences don't just happen by accident.
Sure, and I merely suggest it because I base all of it in science. So there is no speculation there. There's a few, but when there are, I explain that I'm speculating. And still I base it and provide many sources to where I'm finding the information. So that's the only reason that I suggested it. But I can send it to you with no problem.
Oh, please. I
highly recommend it. I highly recommend it.
Oh, please do. I would love to read it. Yeah. And in fact, after the last podcast I did, I got some people that sent me some of their work that also tailors into what I've been talking about. So it's also given me a little confidence that, like, even if I'm not exactly right, but I might be directionally right based off of what other people are working on. So I'll get into saltwater electrolysis, but I want to introduce some concepts ahead of time and allow them to apply as I go through this. So I'm going to rep Arizona a little bit more. There's a place here in Phoenix called the Arizona Biltmore Hotel. And in this hotel, there's a room called the Aztec Room. And you may have heard of the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright. And Frank Lloyd Wright has constructed a lot of buildings or helped design a lot of buildings in Phoenix. And the Aztec Room was one of the rooms that he helped design. And he was very into ancient archaeology. He studied the pyramids. He studied Chichen Itza. He studied all these things. And I want to introduce what happened in this Aztec room. So in the Aztec room, in the center, there's this structure on the ceiling. And if you stand underneath this structure and you talk normally, it will sound like you're talking through a loudspeaker. And around that structure on the ceiling are these beams all the way around it in a circle pattern. And these beams, I want to make the argument, appear to be related to acoustic tuning. In fact, I think that these beams are about sound amplification. And so again, if you stand in the middle of the room and you talk normally underneath this structure with these beams all the way around it, that it sounds like you're talking through a loudspeaker. Now I want to introduce this design and remember this because this will come up again when I talk about the grand chamber in the pyramids. But I just want to show that this has been demonstrated in real life. So acoustics is another, like you said before, acoustics is another common aspect of megalithic structures all over the world. There are many structures that demonstrate advanced understanding of acoustics and have applied that understanding. And I want to play this video, and he's going to be able to explain it better than me, so I'm just going to play this video, hopefully with sound. Let me know if the sound comes through.
Yeah, when I hear the birds.
No sound, bro. No sound.
No sound?
But it reproduces the sound of a bird that is typical of the area. So.
Yes.
Yeah. I've seen this, something like this before.
Okay, so I mean, everyone here is familiar. So if you haven't seen it, you can look up this video. It's very short, and it demonstrates what this is. And what I'm trying to say here is that in order to achieve that exact result where it sounds like a bird, this is highly precise. if you change the spacing on these steps or make a mistake with these steps, the spacing on these steps, it'll alter the sound and it won't sound like that. So in order to achieve that result on all four sides, you have to do that intentionally. This is where I'm making the argument that precision is not an accident.
You know,
Precision.
Sorry, Ashish, but I've thought that about like with some of the pyramids where they say it like lacks any art inside. It's because I have wondered. It's like once you start chiseling into shit, you're gonna change. Like it's not the same anymore. Like if you were trying to use cymatics or frequencies or whatever, I mean that could change things.
Yeah, and one of the big problems is that they've cleaned out the inside of the Giza pyramids, the Khafre pyramid, so a lot of evidence is probably lost. But this is just to say that acoustics is a common thing. And megalithic structures all over the world have this, some sort of acoustic tuning as a significant element of their construction. And this is another one of those patterns where multiple independent civilizations have demonstrated the application of understanding acoustics in their engineering. And this has to be pre-planned. You can't accidentally achieve this kind of precision. And you have to know that that's what you're doing in order to achieve it.
Yeah, it's clearly intentional. And to me, this is just it's just child play. This sound of the bird to them is just they knew this technology so well that this was just a party trick. It's the least important of the acoustic effects that this pyramid has.
Yeah.
Inside.
That was probably because we can do this, so we'll just do that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
right,
exactly,
right. Even if the point was just for fun, the fact that they did this for fun makes it even more ridiculous that they just pull this off like it's nothing for them.
Yeah. And now today it's like our big accomplishments, like a fire meme or some shit.
I want to introduce saltwater electrolysis, or another way of saying it is seawater electrolysis. And this is actually a really simple reaction. It's all you need is to run an electric current through salt water. And what electrolysis does is it breaks apart the elements inside. So salt is sodium chloride, NaCl, and water is H2O. And if you run an electric current through it at sufficient voltage, then you'll break apart the sodium and the chloride, and you'll break apart the hydrogen from the oxygen. You'll break apart at least one hydrogen from the OH. Now, if you were to continue this reaction, there is a second step that happens after some time. Now, depending on the conditions, what can happen is that this hydrogen gas that's emitted from the saltwater electrolysis can merge with the chlorine or combine with the chlorine, and it'll form hydrochloric acid. And why that's significant is because Christopher Dunn's team has found hydrochloric acid residue inside one of the shafts of the Khafre pyramid. And hydrochloric, in just to iterate for Christopher Dunn, Christopher Dunn's belief is that they were pouring chemicals into the shafts to generate the chemical reactions needed, and then they plugged them. But in my opinion, they weren't pouring chemicals down the shafts. All of the chemicals that they needed were created inside, just with salt water or seawater. And the benefit of doing saltwater electrolysis is that you also create sodium hydroxide. And sodium, so you're creating, the important aspects here is you're creating hydrogen gas, chlorine gas, sodium hydroxide. So chlorine gas, you know from pools, this is a great way to kill microorganisms by chlorinating water. So bubbling chlorine gas through the water is a form of water treatment. Sodium hydroxide is also a known detergent, and this is also another way of cleaning the water. So what I'm trying to argue here is that if you're an advanced civilization, you're capable of building all these heavily engineered structures, and you have a strong understanding, not just in theory, but in practice that they've demonstrated of how to apply all these skills, well, this civilization will also be thinking about needing fresh water. And so saltwater electrolysis is actually a really easy way to filter water, or at least clean it up. Now, if you allow this is a slow reaction, by the way. It takes more than 24 hours to go to the second step. So this thing that's demonstrated on the screen is the first step. But if you want it to progress into the second step, you would need about more than 24 hours for the hydrogen gas and the chlorine gas to combine. The sodium hydroxide will form pretty quickly.
If I may, how do you see the electric current being introduced, and what metals were used to produce that current?
So this is going to be controversial, but I need to build the argument that the boxes that we find inside these megalithic structures all over the world, including the pyramids, are part of an electrical system. And the smoking gun for this is that Praveen Mohan has a video of Angkor Wat that shows copper wires coming out of one of these ornate boxes at Angkor Wat. Now, this video was recently taken down by YouTube, though, but he told me that he's going to post it again about next week. But what I'm trying to say here is that these more patterns of similarity between megalithic structures. We find boxes, heavily engineered boxes, different kinds in different places, but so many of these heavily engineered boxes exist all over the world, all over the place. Teotihuacan, the Giza pyramids, the Serapeum, which is something I'll talk about in a minute. Angkor Wat has one, the Taj Mahal has two, and so on and so on. So again, and one of the other issues with these boxes is that they're referred to as tombs, and that's where they're supposed to bury human remains, but we never find human remains in these boxes. And the other problem with these boxes is that they're often incorrectly sized and vary in size by a wide amount, a large amount. For example, the ones in the Serapeum are close to 15 feet long. But the ones in the pyramids, if I recall correctly, are around 5 feet long or so. And both of them are incorrectly sized to be for a human or human remains. So what I'm trying to build the argument for is that the electrical current is likely coming from these boxes. But another thing that we also know is that Christopher Dunn's team has drilled a hole into the pyramids, and he's found that they're filled with quartz sand. And we know about the piezoelectric effect, probably commonly understood right now. But just to quickly iterate, it is a concept that is understood with watches and even torches that if you strike a quartz crystal, it'll generate an electric spark. And this is well understood. And it's very simple. And so there is an advantage here. Let me go to this little diagram here.
You know, I want to ask this real quick because I'm going to end up forgetting about it. It's something I wanted to bring up before, and probably for Ricardo too, and you, Ashish, maybe anybody who knows this. Back in the day when I used to do like rituals and stuff, I used to use a lot of Egyptian deities, and sometimes you give them offerings. I used to make natron because that was something that supposedly they used in rituals. So I was like, all right, I'll make that. And that consists of just baking soda and salt, and you basically cook it. Now I'm wondering, like, would that make any combination that you guys actually think would be useful and shit like this? Like maybe they're not understanding why they actually made that stuff. Like, is there?
You're talking about substances that are really good at disinfecting.
Yeah, okay.
Which is similar to what I'm talking about. That's, in my opinion, the initial. So step one, treating water. You want to get rid of all the microorganisms. You want to clean it out. You want to eliminate all the pollution. And I'm going to make the argument that there are numerous features within the pyramids that demonstrate that this is the initial step. It's not the only thing, and there's more things that happen. But step one, what is step one? I think you need to filter water, and I think that what they're doing with this water is they're also moving it to the other pyramids. And so we also know that the etymology for the word chemistry comes from Egypt. Egypt used to be called Kemti, or Kemi. There's multiple names.
Kemet.
I'm sorry?
Kemet.
Kemet. Yeah, sorry, Kemet. And so this is the etymology for the word chemistry. And I think Land of Chem has done, on his channel, he's done a lot of really good work showing that the southern pyramid is generating ammonia or creating ammonia, which is really useful for fertilizer. And so another big supporting feature is that the arid sands around these pyramids, this is a relatively newer feature of this area. We know, and this is not an opinion, it is understood, that the entire area surrounding the pyramids, the Giza pyramids, was lush and green, had lots of vegetation, very, very different than what it is now. And so, again, an advanced civilization that demonstrates a lot of understanding would be able to understand that ammonia is useful for fertilizer. And so in my opinion, once they're done treating this water and filtering it, they're sending this water to the other pyramids and using this water to do further things. And I think that's part of where Land of Chem basically picks it up and runs with it from there. So what I want to demonstrate is how saltwater or seawater, same thing, seawater electrolysis would occur in the pyramids. So we know that there's water reservoirs all around the Giza pyramids and the Giza plateau. And there is a water reservoir right here on the outside of the descending shaft, just one of many. And this would just be a gravity-fed system where water would pour down from the reservoir to the subterranean chamber. And then you could keep filling this pyramid up to the same height level as the water is on the outside. So, for example, if the water reservoir on the outside is above this entrance and above the Queen's chamber or around the Queen's chamber, then just purely with gravity alone and nothing else, you can fill up to here at least with water. And that would just be off the water reservoir alone. And we know that there was a branch from the Nile River that came near these pyramids. Also, Christopher Dunn's team has also found seashells and clams down here in the subterranean chambers. And we have evidence of salt deposits all throughout the subterranean chamber and all the way up into the Queen's chamber as well. Salt deposits common. Very common. In fact, in the subterranean chamber, in the old pictures, it looks like it's caked on there pretty hard. So there's a lot of evidence to suggest that water was flowing through this area. And also the current narrative, just to establish that as well, the current narrative is that this was a mistake, effectively, this subterranean chamber, and that they abandoned this and they instead decided to build the Queen's chamber. But just on the surface alone, that doesn't make any sense because, first of all, why, if they were trying to build something that was a tomb, why did they build it underground instead of in the construction of the pyramid? And then on top of that, if this was a mistake, then why did they build this ascending shaft right here, going all the way from that quote-unquote mistake to the actual real thing? And so, in my opinion, what's happening is you have ambient temperature water coming down into the descending shaft. And then what I think is happening here in the subterranean chamber is that the water is being heated. And the hot water will be the one that rises up into this well shaft over here. And there's something called a countercyclical vortex. There's shaping on this. I don't want to get too much into this because when I talked to Randall Carlson about it, he kind of didn't want to talk about it. For some reason, I think he's kind of gotten a lot of criticism for his vortex thing, and maybe he doesn't want to talk about it. But in my opinion, what's happening here is that there's a countercyclical vortex where cold water is going in one way in a vortex, and then hot water is spinning counter to that going the other way. And so if you have clockwise rotation right to left for the cold water, and then for the hot water on the outside of the cold water, counterclockwise rotation going the other way, you'll have a system that will be able to feed specifically hot water right here at this division into the well shaft going up. And this will combine heat and just a gravity-fed system to fill up into this chamber. So heating it is just the first step. It's just to get water going, and it's to kind of get rid of the pollutants. That's why I think there's this what do you call this? The pit? I think they call this the pit. So it makes sense because this process is going to have a lot of what do you call it? Like particulates, residue, pollutants, this, that, a lot of nonsense. It's not what you need. So you need somewhere to dump it. And so if you heat the water, the only thing that'll make it back up is the hot water, and maybe the salt water will make it. But a lot of the larger particulates, the clams, all that stuff, the reason why we only see the clams here and not up here is because they have this whole section here as a initial filtering mechanism. And the only function of this is just to generate heat and dump the remains.
And how is the heat generated?
So that part I don't have a good answer for, but we do know that there's this construction on the side. There's this side room that looks like it's engineered as well.
But it would be flooded.
So underwater heat. So one more thing about these boxes. So we have evidence in the Queen's Chamber and in the King's Chamber of a massive explosion that's occurred. And when you look at the box that's in the Queen's Chamber, that box, which I'm going to say is initially a granite box, multi-ton granite box, what it was originally, that box looks like a charcoal brick today. And you have to kind of think, if every other box everywhere else in Egypt is this giant, heavily engineered granite box, this is not going to be the only one in Egypt that's not. So what I'm getting at is I don't know how to solve the boxes in its entirety. What I'm trying to say is principles, and solve by the principles alone, and then fill in the pieces.
If I may, let me just give you might not have this piece of information. So first of all, in order to purify the water, what we find in megalithic sites is that the purification was done by resonance alone. So I give you the example of the Osiris shaft that is right next to the pyramid. And you find 3 vertical shafts that are not connected to anything. They were left blocked. You have 3 different levels. And at the bottom level, you find water. That water is completely pure, although it's filled with litter. It has rotten wood in it. It has debris. And it's absolutely pure. Why? Because the resonance of the site, and it's the only autonomous site that I've studied so far, and that doesn't need the introduction of artificial sound into it. It creates its own sound by these 3 additional shafts that are not connected. So what happens is the creation of what is called by science now today as easy water. It was known by the ancients as living water. So this living water, because of the sound, creates hexagonal molecules. These hexagonal molecules creates surface contact in all sites, which means there is no space for impurities. Mm-hmm. So in terms of purifying water, you don't need anything more than sound itself.
Yeah. So I'm familiar with...
Let me just say this. In terms of the salt water that you speak, it's very easy to explain, because from 4000 BC to 3600 BC, there is this event that caused the Great Flood in the Middle East that is called the Burckle crater. So when this happened, and it is a multi-impact site all over the world, but the known is the Burckle crater. You have 1 in the Atlantic, 2 in the Pacific, and they all happened more or less in the same time frame that caused multiple floods all around the world. It caused months of rain. It caused weeks of boiling rain at first and then cold rain after, that caused all these events. So that salt water is why you find the clamshells not only on the 3 first levels of the casing stones, as you find those clams and those fossils that are relatively modern compared to what was supposed to find inside the pyramids itself. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying that there is very good scientific data that can explain all of those factors that you are describing.
So I agree, and I understand about the cymatics, and I'll talk about cymatics as well to help create easy water. Also, just to add on to that, and something that I want to talk about a little later, is that infrared is also capable of structuring water, crystalline structure of water. And I believe in the Khafre pyramid, both of these principles are being applied as well. Now, I do know, I have heard about maybe what you were alluding to is that there's a large discussion about how the pyramids might be tuned to the frequency of the Earth. I don't want to bring it up right now, but what I'm going to be discussing a little bit later is that, in my opinion, the pyramids are trying to dampen all energetic noise. And they do that in a variety of ways. I want to set up saltwater electrolysis first, and then the next thing I'll talk about is the various elements that we know about that create a dampening effect for energetic noise in various aspects. So I do, and I also do agree that cymatics is a good way of removing pollution from water, and this has been demonstrated. And infrared can also influence the crystalline structure of water, and it has also been demonstrated as a way of removing pollution from water. And some tangential evidence, scientific evidence, it is well understood and heavily published that infrared light therapy on the human body generates health benefits of various kinds. And the human body is also overwhelmingly composed of water. And one more feature of easy water that is, I think, also significant, that is relevant to the Khafre pyramids, is that if you create a crystalline structure for water where the bonds of hydrogen are close together and the oxygen and hydrogen are on opposite sides, you can create a dipole in easy water as well. And so this is significant because it can create a direction, and it allows water to have both a positive and a negative end. And this is why it's very difficult right now with given information or known information to, in my opinion, it's difficult to solve right now exactly what the boxes are doing. But I think it's sufficient enough to say right now that these boxes all around the world are part of an electrical system. And I think that when we're building the foundation for understanding what these are, I want to start with the base primitives. And the first step that is not well accepted is the idea that electricity exists anywhere in these structures. And so before we get too deep into theory, I just want to make sure that we hit all the primitives. And again, more evidence of why we know that these civilizations understood electricity, or at least understood magnetism. It's because of how they positioned these megalithic structures on polar north and south perfectly, over and over and over again, demonstrating again that they understood this principle. So in my opinion, where the electric current actually starts to play a role is in the Queen's Chamber, in the subterranean chamber. I'm a mathematical person. And so to me, it is order of operations matters a lot. And it is significant to me that things happen in a sequence and not all at once. And so I think that there is a functional reason for a step-by-step process. And I will also show a little bit more evidence when I get to the Grand Chamber of a step-by-step process where order of operations matters, and that this sequence is part of the functional purpose of the pyramids. So what we know in the Queen's Chamber is that there's salt deposits all over here as well. And the argument that I want to make is that this is where electrolysis on the salt water begins, and that this is where the reactions will begin. And some hard evidence that we found is that they have Christopher Dunn's team has already found hydrochloric acid in one of these shafts. I think it's the south shaft over here. Now, hydrochloric acid
could have been added to increase the efficiency of the system too.
You mean like they were pouring hydrochloric acid down the shaft?
At certain points,
yeah.
They could, if they didn't understand the technology, they could start adding that to increase the output, according to your theory, because hydrochloric acid would increase the efficiency of the system.
So one of the other things that's also being created is the sodium hydroxide. And if you allow this reaction to continue, my understanding is that the hydrochloric acid portion of saltwater electrolysis is not the favored reaction. It is a side byproduct but it is the minority product, or it is a low yield product on average. Now,
so you think it would be enough by natural means only to find the quantities that Christopher Dunn found there?
So he didn't find massive quantities. He found residue. And the yield, my understanding at ambient temperature and pressure, the yield of hydrochloric acid on saltwater electrolysis will be in the range of 10 to 20%, assuming nothing else. So that's pure salt water. It doesn't mean if there are other things in the salt water, like seawater, for example, if there's magnesium, and I think they found zinc, this might actually negatively impact the yield of hydrochloric acid. However, what I'm trying to get at here is that hydrochloric acid, if we're looking at these as a chemical reaction chamber, there aren't too many ways. There are some ways, but there aren't too many ways to just create hydrochloric acid out of a solution. You have to put a lot of effort into creating it, and saltwater electrolysis is among the simplest ways to create a low yield. Admittedly, a low yield. There will be a way higher yield of sodium hydroxide that is created. But what is also interesting is that hydrochloric acid is highly acidic, and sodium hydroxide is basic, but slightly basic. It's not the same degree of extreme acidity that hydrochloric acid is. Sodium hydroxide is less extreme in its basic nature. And so part of the argument I'm making here is that this is multifunctional, and we're going to see, as we keep going through this, multiple methods of filtering water. And one thing that's happening here is by combining hydrochloric acid and sodium hydroxide without a membrane layer in between means that these two things come together, and this helps pH balance the water. Whenever you want to create a splitting mechanism where hydrochloric acid is only found on one side but maybe not on the other, this kind of, without a membrane in between that is known or visible, this indicates that there is some sort of charge that like a battery. If you maybe I should have described conventional wisdom. So conventional wisdom in saltwater electrolysis is that there is an anode and a cathode side, and the chlorine will be attracted to the anode side, the positively charged side, and the hydrogen, the positively charged hydrogen that had a electron stripped off of it, and the sodium would be attracted to the cathode side, the negatively charged side. And so what's interesting is that Christopher Dunn's team found hydrochloric acid only on one side. Now, if hydrogen doesn't have the electron split off of it, it'll combine with other free-floating hydrogen and create hydrogen gas, H2. And then this won't have a charge, and it can go in both of the shafts. So I'm thinking about the Queen's Chamber shafts as being test tubes. And that's because saltwater electrolysis will create a lot of pressure. When you're creating hydrogen and chlorine gas, this is going to create a huge amount of pressure in the head space. And so that pressure and that gas needs somewhere to go. Otherwise, you're going to eventually explode the system. And so if you allow this reaction to continue slowly for a longer period of time, hydrogen gas along with chlorine gas is how you get these two to interact with each other and settle into hydrochloric acid. But this thing isn't going to happen that easily if they're also in the presence of other things. Like if it's a slurry of different elements, like what I'm expecting to be in the Queen's Chamber, especially when you have the water with all the residues and stuff in there, then you'll have a lot of other side reactions that are occurring, and this becomes chaotic. But if you can trap hydrogen gas and chlorine gas, which is the only gaseous elements that are being created initially in the reaction, then you can trap that in the shafts. And so where I was going with this was that the water level on the outside doesn't need to be very high. It only needs to be up to the height of the Queen's Chamber. And that's actually a good thing, because then that allows you to look at these shafts as being inverted test tubes. And then this will allow the gas to float in and trap into a very confined space. This is very small space over here. And this will allow, with pressure buildup, the hydrogen gas and the chlorine gas to react with each other. Because you don't want to have chlorine gas will become really caustic if it sticks around for too long. And so another thing that happens is that this can also this reaction can recirculate back into sodium chloride. So if you have the sodium hydroxide still present in the Queen's chamber, which that would be in particulate matter form, it would be solid form. So that wouldn't be a gas that would be going up in the shaft. So one of the things I was hoping is maybe we could see if there's any sodium hydroxide anywhere around these places. Then you would be able to have the hydrochloric acid come back and come back as liquid, fall into the liquid solution, pH balance, get interaction with the sodium hydroxide, and then the hydrochloric acid and the sodium hydroxide, they can reform again, and you can create salt all over again. So in other words, this process can go forward and backwards.
So what you're saying is that the two shafts are condensation tubes?
Yes, that's a great way to think about it. Yeah, that's how I'm thinking about it. So one of the other unexplained things is why did the people who engineered this, there's not a good explanation yet for why they changed the construction of the King's Chamber and the shafts to rose granite. And they made that change explicitly. And I want to introduce a couple concepts with this. So another thing that Christopher Dunn's team has done is he's looked at the cutting rate that you can do into hard granite with a copper saw, and then compared that to a diamond tip machine saw. And your best case scenario with a copper saw cutting into granite is you can go at a rate of about 3 millimeters per hour, constantly cutting. And with a modern day diamond tip machine saw, that rate increases to about 30 millimeters per hour. So if you look at these boxes at the Serapeum, which I have here somewhere. Here we go. These boxes are enormous. And again, way incorrectly sized to be a tomb. So one of these cuts, look at how deep of a cut you would have to make and how long of a cut you would have to make. If I'm going to round to 15 feet, I know it's a little bit less than 15 feet, but just to say 15 feet for the easy math, it would take, with a diamond tip machine saw, just to make one cut, and it says nothing about depth, just one cut of that length, that would take more than 6 days with a diamond tip machine saw, going nonstop just to make the one cut across this box. So if a copper saw is going at 3 millimeters, which is 10 times longer, then cutting one side would take more than 60 days. And that's just one side. Now, you also have to cut the ends, you have to cut all the sides, and then you have to cut the lid, and then the lid also has shaping. And now you have to cut each of these shapes. And that says nothing about the amount of copper you're going to be shaving off of the copper saw, because copper is softer than granite. And so this process, just to cut one side, make one cut, not even saying anything about depth, that would take more than 60 days with a copper saw, nonstop, 24/7. And that also doesn't say anything about the polishing on it. These granite boxes are mirror finished. They're polished heavily. And on top of that, you have to be able to scoop out somehow the inside. And the precision on the interior of these boxes is also extreme. And that also would add just an astronomical amount of time. So what I'm getting at is every single time you add even one granite block to the construction of any of these megalithic structures or these pyramids, you are increasing the labor time astronomically. And so what is happening in this King's Chamber is this whole king's chamber and all of these shafts are made of many granite blocks. And by the way, at the Serapeum, they have 24 of those granite boxes. Just imagine how long it would take with a copper saw to cut one of them, let alone 24 of them. And that's just in one place in Egypt. That's just one thing. And then they're doing it again and again. And then they have all these...
They don't fit on the front door.
And exactly. And that's the other problem, is that they don't fit. There's no passageway that would allow you to insert those granite blocks or those granite boxes after the fact. They would have to make them first and then construct the buildings around them, because there's no way to transport them. Yeah. So the granite in here, that's an expensive choice. That is an extreme high labor cost, labor intense choice. And there are also examples of mistakes. Even in the Egypt Museum, they show one of the granite boxes that was a mistake, where they made an incorrect cut and they just had to abandon it. So if you make a mistake, that's like a year of your life just gone, where you have to cut 24/7 nonstop. So, and there are plenty of examples of them making cuts that were mistakes too. So each of those is an enormous labor expense, an enormous amount of time, astronomical amounts of time get added every time you add granite. So what is the functional purpose of granite? And now here's an argument that is hard to currently support, but it's something that I'm trying to work with. So in my opinion, the reason why you would want to have red rose granite in this area is because you want to treat the water with infrared. And there are two methods of getting infrared light into these chambers. So first of all, something to know is that infrared light in the near red spectrum, there are certain wavelengths that are capable of penetrating through limestone. But this rose red, deep red rose granite would reflect infrared light. And so if you just kind of go with this journey with me for a minute here, if you had a source of infrared light that was able to focus itself into this shaft, even with the plug stones, infrared light could penetrate even the plug stones. It could be reflected all the way down into the shaft and treat the water through here. There's also a second method of generating infrared light, and this is also something that Christopher Dunn talked about. There's a TED talk about how a scientist was looking at geology and noticed that there was infrared light, or thermal imaging was showing that before an earthquake, a few days before an earthquake, they would see on thermal imaging, they would see granite that would generate infrared light before an earthquake happened. And what they found is that if you apply mechanical stress to red rose granite, they actually looked at specifically rose granite. If you apply mechanical stress to this granite, you can push out electrons from this mechanical stress, and you can also generate infrared light. And when earthquakes happen, before the earthquakes happen, if there's rock like granite in the area before then, the mechanical stress will then show this on thermal imaging, and they've successfully done this many times now. They've successfully been able to predict earthquakes a few days in advance just by looking at thermal imaging. So
that's exactly why they chose fault lines, because that's those small earthquakes cause and amplify the piezoelectric effect. And in fact, when they put rose granite in a hydraulic press and they shut down the lights, you can actually see the granite, the crystal matrix within the rose granite to light up and produce light.
Yeah, so. Perfect. Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna get a little bit into the earthquake thing a little bit later when I talk about the SAR scans. But I want to get away from the idea of the earthquakes being part of the mechanical stress that is generating the piezoelectric effect. Again, I think that they are generating.
Not generating, amplifying. It's different.
I'm going to make the argument that these pyramid structures are dampening. So actually, now is a good time to kind of talk about that. So I think one of the critical features that is demonstrated in various ways in the Khafra pyramid is that these are trying to eliminate energetic noise from all sources. So one aspect of this is the exterior of the pyramids. They were encased in white limestone. And the white limestone is a great way to reflect all visible light and also will reflect UV light as well. The reason why they changed from white limestone to regular limestone on the inside is because limestone is a little bit more of a porous structure. And having a porous structure generates two major advantages. Number one, this is a great way to dampen sound. And so you'll be able to capture sound in these little porous structures. And number two, if you're running water through the system, wherever water comes in contact with limestone, the limestone will become hydrolyzed. And this, now normally inert limestone is just inert. But once you hydrolyze limestone, so all you have to do is run water through it, then that makes the conductive properties of limestone significantly better. I'm not going to call it a conductor. It's not going to be anywhere near copper or anything like that. But it does significantly improve the conductive ability of limestone. And so why is that useful? So if we're talking about the piezoelectric effect and the whole pyramid is filled with this quartz sand, so another way of just kind of in your head, the way you can think about it is you can think about the pyramids as being filled with static electricity. And the newer scans show the void above the grand chamber. In my opinion, this void is also going to be filled with quartz sand. And the whole point of this is to have a lot of charge that is diffused throughout the pyramid. And then wherever limestone comes in contact with water, this portion will be more conductive and it'll generate vectors for the electric charge to travel. So there needs to be a way to draw all that piezoelectric effect out of the sand and have it directionally travel to where you want it. In my opinion, this is all done with water. And on top of that, we've already discussed easy water, and you can create a dipole based off of this. And so if you tune it to the right frequencies or treat it with infrared or both. And what we also notice that they have these triangle like structures on the roofing of these chambers. So what is the advantage of doing this? So what I believe is that this is also a heavily pressurized system. And the point of having this roof-like structure here is to generate more surface area and concentrate the weight down into these pointed areas, both this portion of the king's chamber and this portion of the queen's chamber. So again, if you have saltwater electrolysis, you're creating hydrogen gas, highly explosive, and you're generating chlorine gas. If you put this system under high pressure and high temperature, there are a number of other side reactions that happen, but one of the side reactions that gets favored under high pressure and high temperature is it leans more towards oxygen, creating oxygen as well. And so O2 will also be generated here. So it makes sense to me why they had to build these structures deep inside really heavy pyramids, because this is going to be in a highly this could generate really big explosions, because this is going to be a highly explosive gaseous area where you're going to have hydrogen gas and oxygen gas being created here. And we have multiple signs of a massive explosion occurring both in the Queen's Chamber, and Christopher Dunn's team has measured the granite in the King's Chamber, and it shows signs of mechanical stress pushing out from the King's Chamber, indicating a big explosion happened there as well.
And you have the cracked stone at the corner.
I'm sorry?
You have the cracked stone at the corner.
And you have the cracked stone, yeah. And then also the boxes look like they're a charcoal brick. And we know that those are probably were originally granite boxes, just like we see everywhere else in Egypt. So you got to really think what kinds of temperatures were being achieved in order to make something like that happen. One of the other things to note is that granite is also a really good thermal. It absorbs the heat really well. And so granite also is known to deform under high heat. But one of the interesting characteristics of granite is that when you cool it back down, it returns to its original structure, its original form. And so what's interesting about the explosion that Christopher Dunn's team found in the King's Chamber, it's one thing if you saw an explosion and the heated granite from that explosion expanded outward, but you would have expected that to return. The fact that there is still some deformation as a result actually, to me, indicates the high energy level that had occurred in order to achieve an explosion of that size. Because once this chamber had cooled down, the granite should have returned to its normal structure. This is what's classically understood when you put granite under high heat. So this is where it gets really interesting. So the next thing I want to show is kind of just a quick little diagram that basically describes what I'm talking about, how you could have a gravity-fed system. This is called a Pharaoh's pump, but that includes this compressed air section up here, which I'm not including in my description. But basically, you can see how a gravity-fed system would fill this up, and then you would have additional space here that I'll talk about in the Grand Chamber. But this is basically the concept that we're going for here. So what happens when you have saltwater electrolysis generating hydrogen gas and oxygen? The hydrogen gas and the oxygen in gaseous form will be able to travel up into the Grand Chamber. And now maybe what they did was they filled this whole thing up with water, and then they're using the gases to bubble through the Grand Chamber. And then the hydrogen gas would be towards the top, oxygen gas would be a little bit towards the middle, bottom, and then you would have maybe reformed water at the very bottom. This is where I want to bring in those structures that I was talking about from the Arizona Biltmore Hotel. So this is also Christopher Dunn's work. Let me figure out where I put it. So he talks about these I can never say this word right, Helmholtz resonators.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's well understood, probably everyone here knows that the Grand Chamber is acoustically tuned. So is the King's Chamber, but let's focus on the Grand Chamber for now. Now, one thing about the Grand Chamber is that it is not acoustically tuned to the same frequency everywhere in it. It has a step-up mechanism. So this is where I'm talking about order of operations. It starts at the lower end, and there's a lower frequency that it's tuned to at the bottom end. And then as you get towards the top, then it goes to a higher frequency. And I believe the current estimates and the current readings that they've got for the highest frequency achieved there, it's tuned to around 432 hertz or 440 hertz, depending on who you want to listen to. I think Christopher Dunn, his personal experiment that he did himself, saw 440 hertz was the tuning frequency. So this is where I want to incorporate what I was seeing at the Arizona Biltmore Hotel. These resonators appear to be a step-up function. And we were discussing cymatics earlier. So before you, if you're trying to do high-energy physics, which is where I'm trying to get to, then what you want to do is you want to save the step that does cymatics for the treated water first. In my opinion, there are easier ways to treat water, not just with cymatics, although I know that that can happen. But I think the real physical advantage, the actual advantage that cymatics has, is that it structures water in a specific orientation. And more specifically, depending on which frequency that you use, you can angle the hydrogen bonds on water very specifically. And to give a real life kind of analogy for this, the reason why snowflakes get their crystalline structure is discussed in cymatics. Sound waves adjust these bonds, the angle of these bonds. It's still H2O, the same as you know. It's all that's changing is the angle of these bonds. So what I'm trying to get at here is that because the purpose of cymatics in my opinion, for the coffer pyramid is about angling these bonds to structure water exactly the right way, and you're creating a step-up function. So in other words, you're being gentle about it. Your water will start at the lower frequency. This will begin to adjust slowly and organize the hydrogen bonds into a specific angle. And then as it increases, or as it goes up the grand chamber, it will gradually increase the frequency, increasing the energy that is being put into the H2O molecule.
Do you see this grand gallery as flooded?
So in my opinion, it can be, but I do not believe that that's actually what is happening. No. In my opinion, what is actually happening is the chamber is mostly filling with hydrogen and oxygen. But the issue is that if they're not all extremely high energy, if the hydrogen is not at a very high energy band, then what'll end up happening is it's not stable. And it'll combine with oxygen and create water. And so
how do you correlate that with the portcullis, the 3 doors that you can regulate up and down to regulate the frequency?
So in my opinion, what is happening is to help maintain hydrogen gas. This is actually where I was going. So I'm taking the principle that is well understood in water. Cymatics is well understood. I'm taking the same principle and I'm about to apply it to hydrogen gas. So in my opinion, the actual purpose of this grand chamber is mostly for hydrogen gas. And what they're trying to do, while yes, we do understand that you can tune water and you will be able to get these frequencies and do all that, you can do the same thing with just the hydrogen gas itself. And another way to understand this terminology of tuning the hydrogen gas to a certain frequency, another way of interpreting this is it is controlling the spin. And this is really when I'm going to get into some high energy physics. This is where I'm trying to go. Is that we're talking about a massive amount of hydrogen, and it's in context with oxygen, and it's in a highly pressurized system. This is highly explosive. If this is not done in a controlled way, slow, and under tight controls, then this becomes highly explosive and dangerous rapidly. And in this picture, this is Christopher Dunn's picture. He's also showing scorch marks all across the top of the grand chamber. So there's a lot, and of course we have soot and all this stuff. So we know explosions happened all over here. So what we're doing with cymatics in the grand chamber is, in my opinion, we're trying to maintain a high frequency for hydrogen gas. We're trying to keep hydrogen gas in an elevated energy state. And so this is a step-by-step process because we need to control it. If it goes uncontrolled or in chaos or in large bulk rapidly, then this is an uncontrolled high energy physics reaction, and we're talking about like nuclear bombs and shit, or hydrogen bombs. What we're trying to do is control this. So the idea is to be slow about it. And this is where things get even more interesting. So there is a way for hydrogen and oxygen to recombine if it falls to a lower energy state, and all that'll do is create water. But what is commonly understood is this: there's this exit here that goes into the king's chamber. But what is less commonly known is that there is another portal out here at the top of the grand chamber. So that is really what I want to get into, because this is where things get. The portcullis, yeah. So there's a few unusual things. Let me just address the conventional narrative and talk about why that doesn't make sense. So the conventional narrative is that this is the king's chamber is a tomb, and that these blocks here were put there as doors or like blocks, passageways, so that people couldn't go in there and steal whatever was in the tomb. Well, if that was true, then why is there a giant cavity right over the stones? Why, like, putting the stones there just defeated its own purpose, because you could just climb right over it, and it's not even that hard to do. Like, these aren't huge stones. They're really heavy, but they're not like impossible to climb over. So, and there's this huge void up here.
Yeah, you have signs of rope and pulleys to maneuverate them.
Good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's even signs of a pulley system, and there's even a fourth smaller stone, like an anchor block, that would make sense if it was elevated high up in the air, and there's room for it right here. And there's these three spools. There's like signs that there was three spools here, and you could imagine that these three stones were intended to move. In my opinion, the antechamber is a regulating mechanism, similar to how this ascending passageway is also a pressure relief valve. And notice that they're on either end of this grand gallery. So there's these granite blocks that are in this ascending passage. If you put them right here, if there was a huge amount of pressure buildup that went out of control, then these granite blocks could slide all the way down this ascending passage, and they would block the water flow from the descending passage. And then this would prevent the reaction from continuing further. So this makes sense as a pressure relief valve on this end. So now let's talk about the antechamber and how that's also a regulating mechanism.
I'm a bit confused. So you just told me that you don't see water but hydrogen within the grand chamber, but then you speak about water again.
Oh no! So again, hydrogen is what you're targeting in the grand chamber, and there's also oxygen gas, because that's also another byproduct from saltwater electrolysis. So one of the issues is that not every single hydrogen atom is going to be in a high energy state and remain as hydrogen gas. Hydrogen gas and oxygen, when hydrogen falls to a lower energy state, these two, it's not stable. And so this will recombine into water. So both of these things are happening at the same time. You're trying to achieve hydrogen that is controlled and at a high energy state, and that's the part that is collecting at the top of the chamber. But this is not a 100% yield. In fact, I don't know the exact yield, but it won't be anywhere near 100%.
Yeah, but the portcullis then would be regulating a gas or a sound and not liquid, because it wouldn't ever be enough water to fill the grand chamber in those situations.
No, exactly. And that's not where I'm going with this. So hydrogen gas has multiple energy bands that it can be at. What I'm saying is that this lesser known pathway, where do I have it? This lesser known passage that is at the top of the grand chamber, this is the passage where only specific hydrogen is being applied. Meaning this is the hydrogen that is at the highest energetic state. This is the hydrogen that is most stable. And this is the hydrogen that is most pure, meaning it doesn't have other hydrogen gas at lower energy states. This hydrogen gas is the one that is at this hole is at the very top of the grand chamber. So the only hydrogen that would get up to that high of a level is the ones that made it through the cymatics process by the Helmholtz resonators in the grand chamber, made it from the bottom all the way to the top. Only that is what's going to be there, and that'll be under the highest pressure system. So what I'm saying is happening is that the lower energy state molecules are the ones that are being passed into the antechamber. So in here, you can have both oxygen, which will be heavier, and you can have hydrogen gas that's at lower energy states that didn't stay spun into a high energy state. So only what you're trying to do here is you're trying to collect only the hydrogen that spins correctly, spins at the correct frequency, and you're trying to create a chamber above the king's chamber. In my opinion, only the highest energy state hydrogen gas is the one that's collecting up here. The lower energy hydrogen gas is going to collect, and oxygen gas is going to collect in here. And I think that what the purpose is is to create a second high pressure zone, where if the pressure in this antechamber builds to a sufficient degree, this anchor block will push down, and it's on a rope pulley system that we know about, and this pulley system will pull these blocks up. And then this will create a relief where the oxygen and hydrogen that didn't quite make it to the high energy state, which is what you're trying to isolate for, in my opinion, the lower energy band, hydrogen and oxygen, will have a place to vent to. And then what this allows is in the King's chamber and in these shafts, you can vent hydrogen and oxygen, or if hydrogen and oxygen interact with each other, then they can also reform, create water, and that's what would fill here. And so water would get, any reformed water would collect here and then pass down as liquid down the bottom of the grand chamber, and then go right back into this queen chamber where it restarts the process again. So
I'm sorry, I'm getting so curious. I can't resist, and I'm not sure if Nick is going to step down the show or not. But I'm very curious to know what is the purpose of all of this.
Okay, so this is where we got to go.
Yeah, I do have to say I got about like 10 minutes, unfortunately, because I do have another show. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll finish up here. This is the big reveal. So what I've been trying to demonstrate is that there are a lot of acoustic tuning. There's a high pressure system. This is trying to purify water, and that this grand gallery has one known portal that goes towards this upper chamber in the King's chamber, where this specific portal is where you get the tuned hydrogen. Now, think about what you have. Hydrogen is as close to a proton as you can get. If you strip the electron off of the hydrogen, then you have just a proton. And so what I'm suggesting, and I'm hoping a nuclear physicist somewhere will help me figure this out, is that if you put in a lot of effort into getting all the hydrogen to behave exactly the same way, slowly collect them into the King's chamber, this upper portion of the King's chamber, and they're all spinning the same way, all have the same energy state, are all in the same shape, under high pressure, this is possibly one way of doing transmutation. And you have to think about our current tech. Right now, the way that we have, the current method of generating high atomic weight elements beyond our periodic table is just taking elements, primitive elements, particles, spinning them as close to the speed of light as we can possibly get, and then smashing them together. And then maybe for a fraction of a second, you might have a high atomic weight element of some kind. But there's so much kinetic energy with this that there's no possible way you could have anything be stable that way. So what I'm proposing here is that this is a way to control, stabilize, and do this in a slow way. And a significant portion of the stability of elements is their crystalline shape, their geometry. And this King's chamber is triangle shaped. So if you have pure hydrogen in a very high energy state, highly concentrated, all behaving the same way because of the acoustic tuning, under high pressure, in this specific zone at the top, you'll also be able to control the shape of these hydrogen. And if you can do that, then that's how you could generate a stable crystalline structure and possibly manufacture elements, high atomic weight elements. Now,
how do you remove those elements from there?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I have no idea, but I also think that there's more to it than just that we don't know about.
Are any residues of those elements found on those places?
We wouldn't know if it was there was massive explosions. So this reaction went unstable, and we see the signs of massive explosions all throughout. And so if this reaction went unstable and exploded, then there's no way we would find anything.
What kind of elements do you think could be produced or would be more profitable, since this is your theory?
So you can create anything. So it could be something as simple as just creating basic elements that we already know about. But you could create potentially with under enough pressure and under enough energy and under enough stability, you could potentially create high atomic weight stuff. And all I'm trying to say here, and it can be anything in the spectrum, because all I'm talking about is isolating protons. And the major advantage here is that you have a highly pressurized system that controls the shape and does this slowly and isolates high energy, specifically the high energy band hydrogen.
So my final question to you is this. Considering all you said, the investment, the time, the personnel, all there is required to build this, all the knowledge that is needed just to build the structure, let alone what you have been describing, what would be the significance of investing all of that to create elements?
So I think that in alchemy, so there's another thing that I'm afraid to talk about, but I'll talk about it since you're asking. In alchemy, in the discussion about alchemy, there's in the hieroglyphs, in the stories of Egypt, there are a lot of accounts of this salamander description. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, yes. So highly symbolic in alchemy, alchemical.
Highly symbolic in alchemy, yeah. So another name for what this salamander is supposed to represent is saltwater, or sorry, not saltwater, milk water is another name that they give this. Another name that they give this is mana or mana. And in my opinion, what they're trying to create here is one of the things that they could create that wouldn't be too difficult would be deuterium, heavy water, H3O. So stabilized form of deuterium, maybe even a highly energetic form of tritium if we want to take another leap and say that they understand radiation, like highly radioactive substances. But let's just start with the primitives, building up water to deuterium to maybe tritium, which might make sense with such a high energy system. So I think that's probably where they were going with it.
But for what purpose?
So in my opinion, the stories that they tell in Egypt, they have this ankh that you see all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, what is inside the container is deuterium, heavy water, along with probably 2 electrodes. But this is what I think they were going for, is they were trying to create deuterium overall as a mass manufactured.
Yeah, but it has to be something more than just creating a staff that has some special properties.
So I want to make sure that like my high energy physics stuff, like that's second half and beyond primitives. I want to establish just that the primary function, the initial function, is to filter water. And I also believe that this filtered water is being used in other reactions in other pyramids, for example, the Southern Pyramid for ammonia. So I think the initial and primary and the biggest use for this whole thing is water filtration, first and foremost. Then they stacked on additional features beyond that. And by the way, I think they added more features than just the ones that I'm describing here.
Do you have any idea what that purified water will serve? What purpose?
Clean water is great for reactions, like if you need to create another reaction, but also just drinking water. And I mentioned before that there's a lot of well understood and published research around infrared light therapy being helpful for humans and their health. I think the same thing is true for drinking water. I think that there is an advantage to drinking water that is structured in a certain way.
Yes, no doubt about it.
Yeah, so H2O, the same as you know. I'm not talking about pollutants or whatever else, but I think that there is a unique advantage to having water with hydrogen bonds that are with its crystalline structure structured in a specific way, and that this is better for your health than just drinking any normal water. And I think that is the imagery that we're getting. There's this experiment that was done with water, if we still have time. I know we're running out. There was an experiment that was done where they had 3 jars of water that was polluted. There was one jar where someone said nice things, complimentary things to the water. One where they did nothing. It was a control. And then
Masaru
one where they
Emoto.
did, I'm sorry?
Masaru Emoto is the man that did the experiment.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Thank you for giving me the name. Yeah. And they found that the one where you spoke nice to, this is what cleaned the water. And the one that you didn't, that you said all kinds of hateful things to, that one was dark and grimy and horrible, even worse than the control. And so I think that that is probably an advanced understanding that an advanced civilization that was capable of creating these types of structures in the first place probably had, because that seems elementary considering everything else that they've done.
Thank you.
If we have a minute, I'll go. I know you have to go, and if you want to cut me off, that's fine. But I just want to talk.
Sorry, yeah, I do have to get eventually. Yeah, sorry about it.
Okay, so whenever you have to go, just cut me off. It's fine. But I just want to give a little credibility to the SAR scans. There's a lot of criticism. This is the scans that were done underneath the Giza pyramids. And the SAR technology, if you really want to learn a little bit more about the technique, I highly recommend this video that I have on the screen. And this is a fighter pilot that has used the SAR technology for military purposes and is familiar with it. And this is all to say that SAR, the synthetic aperture radio, this technology is not new. The technology has been around for a long time. What is new is the application of it. And there's a lot of criticism about these structures that are underneath the pyramids that they're saying they found. And I want to say that their technology is demonstrating that it probably is actually working. And the criticism I've heard is that these columns underneath the pyramids can't exist because it's going through a water table. Well, if you understand the technology, what it's trying to do is it's trying to measure the vibrational noise of the structure itself and then measure the vibrational noise of the environment around it. Now, if the structure is going through a water table, the water is a liquid, and the water is going to absorb the vibrational noise from the structure itself. And this technology is trying to measure the differential in the vibrational noise of the structure from the environment around it. So the fact that there's strong vibrational noise from the structure at the top, but then as soon as the structure hits exactly where we expect the water table to be, the vibrational noise dampens abruptly. And you can see a little bit of the faint outlines, but the fact that it's dampening here is actually indicating that their technique is doing what they are saying it's doing. This is supposed to be, in my opinion, a known flaw, in that the water table is absorbing the vibrational noise. Therefore, there won't be a differential between the water around the column structures and the vibrational noise of the structure itself. However, there is a lot of vibrational differential here, and it looks like maybe the water table dips in this area. And so it would be really interesting to see if there was a way to verify whether or not the water table in this specific location actually does dip. And if so, that could add even more credibility to their technique. But in my opinion, since they've released their results in March and the discussions they've done since then, in my opinion, they're making a good faith effort, and the technique that they're describing is doing what they're saying it's doing, at least.
Well, they have to introduce something that they're not telling us, because this technology cannot go more than at least 5-7 meters underground. So they could never get the depths that they're saying. So either there is something more, or they are wrong. And one thing, they are wrong. When he described the Tugnesian stone that he said that is at the bottom, around, not exactly on the pyramid, I don't remember if it's the Sphinx or in that area. He said that he couldn't receive the signal, it was black, because Tugnesian reflects the effects of the technology, and that is completely false, because Tugnesian would make through the waves at around 7 meters per second. So that part at least is completely wrong in scientific terms. And the fact that that technology is used often, and it cannot go more than 5-7 meters in depth. So either they are using something more that they are not telling us, or this is a complete computer graphics that we are seeing.
Yeah, so I'm not going to be any kind of source that is able to either validate or invalidate their technique.
Yeah.
All I'm trying to offer is that if you were to believe what they're saying, I'm not saying it is correct, and I'm not even saying that what they're saying.
Sure, it corroborates your studies. It corroborates what you're saying. Exactly.
And all I'm trying to indicate here is that there is consistency in their description of the technique, and the results. If their technique does what they're saying it does, which again is beyond me, if it is true that it does what it's saying it does, then this is actually the kind of result you would expect if it is doing that. Is that you would expect a dampening of that signal as soon as the structures hit the water table. That's all I'm trying to indicate.
Absolutely.
I agree with you. I have no idea how they're getting a kilometer down into the ground. I haven't heard them explain how they did that. Yeah.
Very well said. I think they might have explained that at the Cosmic Summit, and I don't even remember the answer. Tell you the truth, because somebody asked them that question in the press room. I filmed it, and I don't even remember what they said.
We don't have enough time to talk about it, but I wanted to just show the picture at least. The Taj Mahal shows quite a lot of mechanical similarities to what I just described. White exterior, sandstone, porous stone on the inside, layers of construction, body of water underneath it, acoustic tuning in the central area, and more, lots more. And I just wanted to demonstrate this because this is an example of something that's well preserved. And I wanted to start, I made the argument early on that India has something to offer the world to this topic that most other places don't have. And this is one example. And I think that we should really relook at the Taj Mahal. I would go into more detail, but I know you don't have time for it.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I didn't, honestly, I didn't think it was going to take you that long. My apologies.
Oh yeah, I could ramble on for a long time.
No. I wasn't saying it like that either.
I'm just so excited to have people to talk to about this. You guys don't understand. I've been doing this by myself for years. Nobody cares about this stuff out here, or at least not like enough to work on it.
Yeah, no, it's all right, man. You're good. You're good. No, if I would have known, I probably would have made the show maybe a little bit earlier for you, if you could.
That's okay.
But could always get you back on and talk about it to continue a word of some other things that maybe you got going. Oh, that's right. You had the thing on AI that I was really interested in too. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I did a lot there too, and I have some cool stuff. Yeah.
Definitely wanted to talk to you about that in the future. But unfortunately, because I do have another show for people listening, we got Zachary Hubbard coming on for Gematria at like 10 o'clock. That should be really interesting. But yeah, for everybody, Brooke, real quick, let everybody know where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that presentation. That was incredible. You can find me on Instagram at Dark Florida Podcast and wherever you get podcasts.
Hell yeah. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Tyrone, let them know what's up.
What's up, everybody? So, yeah, thanks, Ashish. That was a wonderful presentation, man. You speak like a professor at a school, man. You do it well. Everything that you find on me, you can find at rebirthoftheword.com. You can buy my book, Journey Through the Origins of History, on Amazon. And appreciate it, Nick. Thanks, Ashish. I appreciate it, bro.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And Ricardo, what is up?
So, again, I recommend, this time is going to be the first recommendation. I recommend Universe Unveiled podcast on YouTube, Institute for Natural Philosophy.org, and Ricard Calvario at X, and my books Resonant Earth and Stardust at Amazon. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Ashish. And I'm sorry for my questions, but I'm just
No, curious. I loved it. You're the only person that ever critiques me in the whole time I talk about it. So, like, I wanted that, to be honest, because I had no idea if anything I said makes sense.
Then send me your email. I will send you my book.
Okay.
I think it will help you in terms of, at least in terms of the papers that it presents. I think it will help.
Okay, I'll add you on X. I'll send you my email. I'll message you.
Awesome, nice. And Bennett, what is going on? How are you?
Broadcastingseeds.com. Ashish, man, I got a page of notes, and I'm gonna get on that India thing. So,
oh yeah,
I've already kind of dabbled into it, but you just, you're opening a can of worms that I can't.
Praveen Mohan's a great place to start.
Yeah, so I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. It was awesome.
Of course. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
And Ashish, if you want, let people know where they can find you.
You can find me on X. I'm social media illiterate and I'm learning. So my X is message for Ashish, the number 4 Ashish, message for Ashish. Hit me up there. Hopefully I'll get better with this and refine it and be able to do this in a more formalized way. But I'm looking at trying to see if I can get some feedback and help build this up. Really what I would like to achieve here is I think we in the community understand that these aren't tombs, but what we need to really figure out is a starting point on how to solve all this all over the world. And that's really what I'm trying to get at ultimately. And then all the other stuff is just flavor text on top. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about all this. That's been great. I haven't really had an avenue to do this, and there's no school or class you can go to try and reverse engineer advanced technology. So this is really the only way to get ideas out there and see if they make sense.
No, that was great. Thank you very much, man. That was a lot. That was a serious presentation. I really appreciate your time on doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, like I said, we'll have to get you on in the future and talk about the AI. Appreciate everybody in the chat. That is what's up. Again, there was a lot of people here from the beginning to the end. I appreciate that. I appreciate some of the newer people coming back. That's what's up. That's why I go live. And again, everybody's links, if they're not in the bottom, I'll make sure they're down there afterwards. But I think everybody should be there, I think. But yeah, that's the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.
That's it for today's episode, and I hope your mind is spinning just as much as mine still is. A big thank you to the Occult Rejects and to Ashish for having me on and breaking down such a wild and compelling theory. Make sure, wherever you get your podcasts, to follow the Occult Rejects and also give them a follow on YouTube by searching the Occult Rejects. I'm so thankful to Nick for the opportunity to be a fellow reject and to contribute on subjects like these. Episodes like this are why I love doing what I do, blending science, mystery, and the unknown in ways that make us look at the world just a little differently. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who loves digging into the weird, the lost, and the unexplained. You can follow Dark Florida on Instagram at Dark Florida Podcast and send your stories to darkfloridatopodcast@gmail.com. And you can support the show at buymeacoffee.com/darkflorida. And be sure to check out the video content on youtube.com/@darkflorida411. Until next time, keep exploring the dark corners of the world. Stay curious and stay strange.